way. He says, or from the control room. He says, but in the studio, you're out of here.
Well, Johnny could be tough.
He was
There's
very
no secret
tough
about that, but yeah, I knew there was some controversy between the two, but I didn't realize it lasted the rest of their career. That's interesting. Yeah, that's why I have you on, Ron, to tell these great stories.
Well, he fired his brother.
Oh, he fired Dick Carson because Dick Carson was his director for many years.
But
I didn't know he fired him. I thought maybe Dick just went on to other things.
No. Do you ever remember the Carson episode where somebody broke his cigarette case, Rickles?
Oh, Rickles, sure, yeah. And he went over to the CPO Sharkey set.
Right. Well, what had happened was they were in a meeting. Ed was there. They were in a meeting, and Dick Carson said, Johnny, he said, I got some great news. And Johnny, now mind you, they're brothers. And he says, what's that? And he said, let me tell you something. He said, I got a gig that's going to only be on the weekends directing the sitcom that Rickles got called CPO Sharkey. And he said, it works out great because, it doesn't detract from, my responsibilities here on The Tonight Show. And on the weekends, I got this gig for, 13, 26 weeks, whatever the contract was for. And it works out well. And Johnny said, boy, that's terrific. He says, you're going to be able to do a great job and put a lot of time and effort into it because you're fired.
Oh, no. I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah. So that was the end of the Carson deal.
Didn't Dick Carson also direct Merv Griffin's show? Maybe that was after that he went to Merv Griffin, too, didn't he?
It might have been. I know he did that or even before.
Maybe before, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was before.
And, wow. That's rough.
Yeah, it was.
Your brother fires you.
Loyalty was very strong. Doc Severinsen said to me, he said, when he walked out from behind those curtains, he says, my hands used to sweat a little bit because, you didn't. I mean, he was, he loved to. He would never show his emotions on TV.
No.
But if something bothered him behind the scenes, he was a perfectionist. But you know what? It paid off because he was the best.
He was the best. Yeah, I mean, 30 years, nobody's going to come close to that.
Never.
You could say Letterman maybe, but I don't think he's in the same league, obviously. But Johnny, every show Johnny did, you felt he was giving his best.
Well, and the length of time really isn't even the factor. When somebody says, well, David Letterman might make 30 years. But David Letterman, or any of them for that matter, but I'm just choosing him, they didn't have the charm, the boyish charm, that Johnny Carson did. And that was something that he captured.
Now, one thing about the shows today, and not to knock them totally, I mean, they're okay, but the comedy Johnny did when he poked fun at people, you never got the feeling he was being snarky or sarcastic, whereas now I think that's all you see on these monologues.
Well, Ed told me what he said backstage one time. This was during the Watergate hearings, and when Nixon finally resigned, or was getting close to resigning, he told his writers, he says, don't do any more Nixon jokes, he says, because he's paid his price. He says, I don't want to knock a guy when he's down.
Yeah.
You don't find that today.
No. I think that was the difference. Bob Hope the same way. I mean, he'd poke fun at presidents in both parties, but it was never where you felt you had to cringe at it. Now you see some of these jokes, and it gets a little. I mean, I'm not a prude or anything, but it's just too much, I think.
What I don't understand is that all of these politicians, senators, vice presidents, candidates for those offices go on these shows. These guys get along together. I mean, John McCain and Jay Leno are very close because John McCain is kind of a car buff.
Yeah.
And they get on the air and they joke around, but man, Jay beats him up sometimes.
He does.
At some point, we talk back and forth, not enough, Doug. But at some point, if you were doing a number, I mean, I'd call up and say, Doug,
he's up.
He's up a little bit. You're killing me.
Well, I never was that. I always thought you do it the same way, Ron. I mean, you can ask a tough question, but you don't have to be confrontational. I think a lot of these interviewers, not the talk shows, I'm talking about the comedy shows, but some of these news interviewers you see, it's all about the news interviewer making them the star, whereas you don't give the guest a chance to explain themselves. So what do you think about that?
Exactly right, Doug. You hit that puppy right on the head, because what you're doing is, and as tough as it is, there's egos in the radio and television journalistic, or even what we do. There's egos, or else we would be not doing this.
Right.
But you have to step aside and understand that you're the facilitator in these interviews. And although you don't want to lose control of it, you also don't want to be overriding it. It's not about, in my show, it's not about me, and it's not about Doug Miles. It's about the person that they're talking about and talking to. And some of these talk show hosts and journalists, and I got to tell you, I think the majority of them, it's about them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
It's about them.
Which, I mean, you're not learning anything that way. I mean, you know.
Well, and you know, I don't particularly like. I was watching Anderson Cooper the other night, and he's not a very confrontational guy. He's pretty level-headed, and he got into a spat with a congressman from Texas, and the congressman said to him, he says, "You know, you used to be good."
Good for him.
No, but ratings sometimes dictate the fact that you know that people are looking for a good argument sometimes, like a collision. People drive by because they want to see the collision.
Well, I know we always like to talk about interviewers and stuff, and Larry King announced his retirement a few weeks ago, and I think we've talked about before, Ron, not a moment too soon.
I thought you're way overdue. Way overdue.
And I used to like Larry. I was a big fan of his on his old radio show and his early days on CNN, but it's time to go when you have to read your questions off cards.
Well, you know, I got to tell you, and I know Larry. Larry used to be on one of my radio stations doing the all night when he was with Mutual Broadcasting. I would be at conventions with Larry. When he would interview Ed, I'd be in the studio with them. And so, you know, I've been in his company several times, and, you know, like I said, I carried his show, and I used to love listening to it.
Yeah.
But that we were talking about Johnny Carson. There's a good example of timing.
Yeah.
Timing is everything. They say, you know, timing in comedy is everything. Timing in music is everything. Timing in when to get off the stage is everything. And I think Larry lost the timing because, and I don't want to be critical, but you know, I watch him. Let's say for example, I was Larry King and you were Doug Miles and you were my guest. And I asked you, so how long you been in the broadcasting business? And you tell me, and I say, how did you get into it? And you say, I killed the guy that was ahead of me to get my first job in radio. And then I ask you, how many years ago have you been in radio? You know, I mean, it doesn't make any difference what the person says. He just goes on to the next question.
You can see him looking down at the card.
Yeah.
Or somebody's telling him in his ear, maybe, but you can see him looking down.
Oh, no, he's got a ton of notes there. No.
And then you see him check it off, like, all right, I asked that already.
It's a grocery list. Okay, I asked him that. He asked one time in sync. They were all there on the dais together. And he asked him, he says, do you guys ever do one-nighters? You know, you're not talking to Steve and Edie, who play, you know, like...
Kutchers.
4 weeks at Caesars, and once in a while they go out and do one-nighters. These guys can only do one-nighters.
Yeah.
It's a trip.
God bless Larry. He's got some other issues, I think, at home, too, he's got to take care of.
Yeah, that's what when you have a real young wife and small children, you got... He's been on my show several times.
Oh, I've heard him, yeah. And I've heard him interviews recently where he's a guest, and he sounds lucid there, but for some reason on his show, it goes away.
Well, you know, I have to tell you, sometimes being interviewed is easier than interviewing. In fact, most of the time it's that way.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I like doing what I'm doing with you because, you know, I'm not responsible for the success of this.
Right.